We have planned a special program as part of our recognition of the upcoming Veterans Day holiday, and are very proud to be hosting Fred Blumlein today for his personal presentation about his service to our country during the Vietnam War. Here's a little further background about our presenter. Fred Blumlein is a graduate of the Industrial Design Department at Pratt Institute, and was a tenured faculty member there from 1976 until his retirement in 2012. As a professor at Pratt, he was a graduate thesis advisor and taught exhibition design, design research, and drawing. As a U.S. Army officer commissioned in 1967, he graduated from the Army's Signal School at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, and then during the Vietnam War commanded a 16-man combat photography unit in the war zone. He is a past president and currently a trustee emeritus of the Kowneck Peninsula Historical Society in Port Washington, and is a former chair of the Port Washington Public Library's Art Advisory Council. Fred is a member of Port Washington's Henderson Marino VFW Post 1819 and is the quartermaster of that post. Today, he is writing a book entitled The History of Easier, Design and the Search for the Effortless. This book is taking Fred a long time to write because it is not easy to do. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Fred Blumlein.
I hope my mic is on, or here we are. Okay, great. You can hear me. Great. Welcome, neighbors, friends, and family. It's amazing to see you all here today. I want to sort of shout out, there is another Vietnam photographer here who I just met for the first time, living in Port Washington. Sir, could you stand up, please, for us also? Thank you. We have an amazingly connective background, to say the least, which is unique sometimes. Today I'm speaking about the eyes of war. What do I mean by that? The eyes of war. The eyes really amount to the people seeing firsthand what the war is about. It's also about photographing, filming, and whatever else, making records of the war so that others can see firsthand what's going on. I have a sort of an outline here for you, just like in a book, first chapters and so on. I'm going to talk about my path, my own path to Vietnam and arrival there. By the way, this is not the Fred Blumlein show of his wonderful work and so on. Hardly about that. I will have some of my images in this thing, but it really is about a blanket use of photos taken by Army photographers during the war. And I'll tell you how that wraps into this larger story than the good old Fred story. Then the next chapter is we supported the 53rd Signal Battalion's mountain outpost. And I'll go into what the heck is a signal battalion. Okay, I'll go into all of that and why we were joined up with them. Combat photography since the Crimean War to date. Well, the date was 1966, 67, 68. Anyway, no further than that, okay? We actually supported multiple combat units in the 2nd Field Force area in Vietnam of all different sizes. Other combat photo assignments that we had. Okay, that's interesting, I hope. Let's see, my men, oh my God, glorious individuals, brave people, and always there to do the job, no question about it. My additional duties at the battalion, some very strange indeed, some sad, and other things. And how about being homeward bound? Yes. Let's start this off by, the first point was, hey, how did I get there? Let's see how this thing works. I'm going to sit down. I can't see very well, so I need all of this preparation here. Okay, path, arrival. Okay, fine. I went to art school. That's why I became a designer, actually an exhibition designer. And I wanted I graduated from Roslyn High School, and gee, I was a star artist there. And I went to Pratt, and I became not such a star there. And then I decided I wanted an artistic career. Selected Pratt, somehow or other they accepted me, I went in. And at that time, you had a choice. When you arrived at Pratt way back when, the ROTC was there, and you could either join 2 years of ROTC, or you might go out and have physical education. Well, I am pretty bad at playing games outside and whatever else. I like to swim and things like that, but no, I don't like to get sweaty. Well, the story may be contradictory to that as we go through here. Well, from there, I went to basic training for signal officers because the Army didn't know what to do with people from Pratt who are in the, in this, what are they going to do? Walk around and paint faces, or I don't know what. So they put everybody into the Signal Corps, or if they volunteered for something else, they would do that. I didn't choose, they just put me in. So I went to signal school at Fort Gordon, Georgia to train basic signal officers training. And from there, I went off to, you can see a little map up here, Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, which was great. That was close to home. And then off to, I had orders to go to Korea. During those days, you were really happy to get orders to Korea. There I was at Fort Hood, Texas. All right, I arrived with my orders, and the adjutant, who was the battalion sort of secretary there, I said, "Here, sir, I've got orders to leave. I'm going." He said, "No, you're not." And then he said, "We're heading out to Vietnam. Get ready." Okay. Oh, okay, fine. Well, I was a telephone signal telegraph officer. So how did I become the photo officer of this unit? I'm sorry with this thing. Dangerous. Well, there was a photo unit there, photo section, connected to the 53rd Signal Battalion. And the officer who was in charge of that was about to get out of the Army. So I got rumors of this guy, and it sounded very strange, that he was vacillating between going to Vietnam and going back, okay, to Houston to an advertising job. Ooh, I said, fair game here. Okay, fine. So I did my voodoo on this guy, and all of a sudden he said, "Fred, I think you're right." And I got the job. I had to prove myself to the battalion commander that I could actually handle a camera, which I could because of my instructions at Pratt. So therefore, I got the job, and off I went. So from there to Vietnam, and slide. Sorry about that. I can't see. That doesn't help at all. Everybody remember where Vietnam is? Up there someplace? Okay, fine. Well, the next slide, hopefully, which doesn't want to come up the way I wanted to. Fussing around. You have to bear with me, okay, please? Don't throw eggs or anything like that. Here's Vietnam. At the time, here's the whole thing together. We had the North up here, supposed and were enemies of the United States and their allies, and South Vietnam down there. All right. Since I was in charge of a unit of multiple people and so on, I was in the advanced party to go over. What does that mean? It means that everybody who was there to set up the battalion, on the ground in Vietnam, got on a plane, and off we went well ahead of time, other than the battalion itself. So there we were, we arrived, and the other gang arrived, okay, via ship, about a month or so later. So all of a sudden, it was unfair, because my time on the plane, and I got there, and I was there before them, and whatever else, but they got the time on the ship. So you had X number of days to spend in Vietnam. Unfortunately, they were well ahead of me by taking a ship across the Pacific Ocean. Okay, so here we go. All right, and there's where they landed. Okay, here we are in, got to get a hold of this thing, Saigon, around here. And down here is Vung Tau, and this is where their ship came in. This Vung Tau is probably one of the most beautiful places on Earth. At that time even, before hotels are there and whatever else, which if you go to Vietnam, and I haven't been back since, they tell me it's a paradise there with hotels galore and so on. So in any event, here they are arriving, getting off the ship, and then these poor souls also had to get onto an aircraft which would bring them into base at Benoit Airport, which is a huge operational installation for the Air Force, the Army, and whatever else in terms of flights and bombing and so on. And there we went out from there to, they went out to our base camp, which was in Long Ben. It was called the Long Ben base, which was the largest operational base in existence ever. And there it was in Vietnam, in charge of a gigantic area of combat operations. Our base camp, this is it when we arrived. Oh boy. You see that tent back there? That's our photo facility. I'll get to that later on. The Army Corps of Engineers didn't prepare this area for us, which was total forest. The United States government hired a company by the name of Pacific Architects and Engineers, who actually came in with their bulldozers as subcontractors, bulldozed the whole place, burned the forest, and whatever else, left a desert of dirt there for us, but also built, thank God, they had places here for eats, all right? This is the chow area over here for the officers. This is the enlisted man's chow area back over in here. So, you know, it was an interesting arrival from that point. And we had dust. Dust on top of dust. You can see this is an ordinary sunny day in Vietnam, you know, with the wind blowing around and dust on every single thing that you can possibly imagine, especially weapons and so on. And this is our glorious tent that I pointed out on the little slide before. And our photo section, 53rd Signal Battalion photo section. What is, I'll get into that in a minute. What the heck is a signal battalion, okay? I mentioned that before. Oh boy, dust upon dust. And here, okay, local villagers were hired. These are women, all right? These individuals worked so hard. They are from a associated village right next to our base camp there, which was called Widows Village. If anybody remembers the Tet Offensive and so on, one of the major operations that happened, basically the Viet Cong infiltrated Widows Village and attacked the 63rd and 2nd Field Force headquarters through that village and so on. These poor souls were there dealing with this stuff. We supported mountain outposts for the 53rd Signal Battalion. Let me talk to you about what a signal battalion does. Talk about communications, right? Radio, all kinds of things. At that time, teletype too. Can you believe this? Ancient history and so on. It's just amazing to think of how far we have now come with all of our endeavors and so on in terms of talking to each other instantaneously and so on. So anyway, we were part of a signal battalion as a photo section, another branch of communication of the Army with itself and with the general public. All right. The first thing I want to point out to you is a mountain outpost. This is something that we took care of also with photography and so on. But on top of that thing, Nui Chau Chen, you can see it. If I turn this on, you'll see it up there. Okay. Okay, that's what it looked like. Now, there are two big mountains in the southern part of Vietnam. We occupied one of them because signal needs height, as you well know, and you have to be on top of a mountain. The other mountain that I will show you in a minute, which we also dealt with, all right, those are the two biggest things in the southern area of Vietnam. This is a French hunting lodge, all right? This is Nui Chau Chan. The French hunting lodges were all over the place, especially then in rural areas and so on, where the French, who dominated, you know your history, South Vietnam or Vietnam from the 19th century. This is one of their hunting villas up there, which we took over. And on the top of this thing, you'll see some antennas. Okay, those are microwave antennas. This is the way major units communicated with each other, and through us, our facilities of telecommunications dealt with these things. You see, this is not just about photography, it's also about the web of interconnected things that affected photography and connected news to you, all through these channels of communication. The second mountain area, okay, right up there on the upper left, Nui Bao Din. Nui means mountain, that's all. And here we have another French hunting lodge, but look down over here. Do you know what that is? It's a rubber tree plantation, all right? Everybody ever heard of Michelin tires, all right? They ran the photo deal in Vietnam. Everybody was taking a lot of stuff out of there at the time. By the way, these are no fighting zones also. You were not, VC, North Vietnamese, Americans, or whoever else, were not allowed to fight and destroy and bomb these particular facilities. This is, again, a representation of a different, of a newer one, probably from the 1920s or whatever else in terms of the architectural style that's there, of a villa, hunting villa, again, with the microwave antennas on the top of this. We go far beyond, again, with technology where we are now. Now, what does this show you? It shows you the communication network that was there through the signal battalion. Here we are, Nui Bao Din. Here we are, Nui Chau Chan. Here's Long Bin Post over here. So these are the major communication networks for all units in the 2nd Field Force. And I have to tell you what that is in a minute, too. And then off to Saigon down in here, we communicated with them. This is a major communications hub that information went into and out of, according to the rules of the U.S. military, all right? Have I lost anybody yet on this one? Or where's the pictures and where's the photographs? And okay, hang in there, because this is a story about the bigger picture of the entire thing, okay? Okay, I want to go back in time, back, okay? Photography was first developed in France way back in the 1840s, the first picture taken in Paris during that time. Then, 1850s, guess what happened? By the beginning of the Crimean War, anybody ever heard of Crimea before? Oh boy, you certainly have. It's was or is, I don't know, part of Ukraine. And at that time, what was going on was a war between Russia, France, and England, all right? And guess who? This guy up here, Roger Fenton, who was an Englishman on his own, went out to the battlefields with a horse and wagon and with his plates and shot them. And at that time, obviously, you had about, 10 minutes to expose a photo at that particular point? And then you got something on a glass plate or something, and then you take it into the back of this thing and develop the hell out of it and not even print here, but make the glass negatives. That's what he did. And then we move forward. Oh boy, we move forward to Vietnam. Guess what? This is the same thing. This is, no, the horses are under here. They're really small, but they're powerful horses under there. And on the back of this thing in here is a complete photo lab. Let me tell you what we did besides taking pictures. Just as importantly was getting pictures from other photographers in our surrounding areas from different units and so on. Ours plus theirs were brought to us to be developed and printed, okay? This is a printing facility in the field. all right? And what we have there is something that is absolutely not unique because Fenton had, had invented it in the 1850s. And here we are, oh my God, 1966, doing the same thing in the field. Now in the field, remember him? Matthew Brady, and here he is with his setup. Okay, this is where he was doing his plate development and so on. And Brady is, I don't know if you know the story of Brady, but kind of a sad soul. What he did, he got permission from Abraham Lincoln to do his photography in the field. But what he also wanted to do was sell his pictures, all right? So he had a little company, invested a huge amount of money in. They went out into the field, they photographed everything they could. They couldn't photograph action, though. That was impossible with, you know, these are long exposures that they had to get these glass plates onto and so on. So he brought them back, all right, and made prints and so on, and then went back to New York after the war and had an exhibition. Sell those pictures to the public. And guess what? Civil War? You're going to show me pictures of that horrible thing that the country just went through? No one bought the pictures, not one. He went broke. Poor, you know, poor Matthew. The story. Wicker, Alan Wicker. Alan Wicker was a British photographer, and basically I swiped this, this photograph. Here's signal section right in here. From his documentary film that was made about him called Wicker's War. Don't tell anybody, please. You know. Okay, you swear. I got it now. Anyway, Wicker was a British commander of a photo unit. Again, the commanders of photo units did not take all of the pictures. They had photographers roaming around all over the place and so on, all over creation. And in Italy, his groups, pardon me, started in the south and made their way north, following the Allied conquering of Nazi-occupied space in the peninsula. But again, notice the tent. Sorry. Okay, up to speed now. Guess what? Again, improvements. Absolute improvements. Here, we had better canvas. It was a great invention that helped to keep everything dry, all right? But in that tent that you see, okay, was this. We had one of those photo vans. Remember the thing on the truck, the box on the truck? Parked in the back of that tent. But inside the tent, there was a little office, and I'll show you a picture of me in the office or whatever. And here, you can see, over here, anybody know what these things are? Photographers out there? Okay, here's a washer. Okay, after prints are made, they have to be washed. This is a tumbling automatic washing machine. Can you believe that? For black and white prints that we were making at the time. And these things are Big Mama dryer, baby dryer over here. They have to, if they come out of the wash, they have to be dried, or else, as in the mobile photo vans, you hung them up with clothespins, you know, like laundry inside the van itself. This is what the inside of our photo vans look like. Imagine all this. You know, here, I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but if people want to ask me about film development process and printing, okay, later, please, I'll be here to answer questions, all right? But this is the process that took hours to take a photo which would come in and film in this door in the field, right? And be processed and then dried on, ooh, what does it say, dryer? Oh, there was a dryer in there. Okay, fine. But anyway, dried there. And, okay, how does this relate to digital photography now? Does it relate at all? No. We take lots of pictures and whatever else and so on. But here, these pictures became precious entities, to tell you the truth. I have one of them up here that was done in the field that you may take a peek at later on, or should if you want to. That has an explanation, and I'll get into that later also. But this was a process. By the way, these photo units were air conditioned. Oh, in the field. Can you imagine having an air conditioner with the military running around all over the place, smashing at the door, let me in, let me in. Didn't quite happen that way, but the photo techs under me were very, very happy, to be in there. It wasn't for them, by the way. It was to control the temperature of the chemicals. Because if you don't control that, it's out of control totally and just simply does not work. Ooh, equipment. Okay, some of you may be familiar with speed graphic up here. Do you remember old movies where, Joe Palooka was boxing and on the side the flash bulbs were going off and whatever else and so on? Same camera. Graflex invented this thing back in 1912. It was used in World War I, World War II, Korea, and guess what? Vietnam. This was hand-me-down stuff from the Korean War or even before. The U.S. was not prepared militarily really to go into Vietnam properly. Besides not preparing the people, the soldiers were not prepared properly, okay? The other thing that we had, oh, by the way, we had a slew of these, about 12 or so of these, and we had one of these, Leica, all right? This is a camera that is incredibly delicate. Now, okay, delicate cameras, big, heavy cameras in the field? No. Big, heavy cameras were used for, going to parties. Click, 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 all the generals and whatever else and all the parades and blah, blah, blah. This thing over here, so complicated as far as parts and failure go in the dust that I talked about before, never used, hidden away, so that I, who was in charge of all the equipment in this unit, could turn it in when I left in one piece versus a handful of pieces. This camera over here, this is mine, and right over here, if you come up here, you'll see the same camera. This is one of my cameras that I used over there. The other one's one of our daughters used, and I guess it didn't last that long or whatever else, but it disappeared into the daughter area. Anyway, this is the first underwater camera by Nikon. It's called the Nikonos, excuse me. And you could, well, I invite you to pick it up. It's like a brick. You could stop anybody with this thing by just swinging it around and hitting them in the head. It's indestructible, all right? Difficult to use, yes, in terms of changing the film out and so on, but an incredibly lensed camera and of glorious use. Now, I bought this. I bought 3 other cameras in Vietnam, but it all depended on price. Other cameras that were used were these things, single lens reflex cameras, okay, very different from this, okay, which has a rangefinder in it. What do these things mean? I don't know, something about cameras and whatever else. But that thing up there was the cheapest thing that you could get at the PX. All of the photographers, me and all of the people in my unit, bought their own cameras. I'll leave it at that. Bought them at the PX. Whenever you came in and so on, if you showed up at the Saigon PX, get yourself a camera because you're going to need it because you're not going to use these other things. This is all about our equipment, all right? This is our taxi. Right in front, and I'll go back and show you again the base camp that we were at. There was the parking field for these babies, all right? These are the Hueys, all right? This is the workhorse of the Vietnam War in terms of extracting the wounded, the dead, and whatever else, firing at people and so on, and taxiing people from one place to another, especially photographers. Given a mission, which was only maybe 10 miles away, you had to fly into it. You're not going to get in a Jeep or onto a truck to get there because there's action taking place. You jump in one of these babies and off you go. We had 2 Jeeps also. I had so much fun driving around in these things. I almost went off the road lots of times. But then the commander told me, hey man, officers are not supposed to drive their own vehicles. So, I mean, that's crushing. You know, when all this is happening to you, that is taken away. This is my driver. This is a guy, Littell. Wonderful kid. He was only about 19 years old at the time. I wasn't much older myself and so on. And guess who this is over here? Sound asleep. Okay, so in Vietnam, when you have time, you eat and you sleep. And go to the bathroom. Oh boy, okay. So here was my time to do that. Good old Fred in there. And by the way, this guy over here, Littell, is carrying an M16, and I'll talk more about that now, okay? As photographers, you know, you need both hands to do this, don't you? So every photographer was fitted out with Colt 45, okay, semi-automatic pistol. Now, why a Colt 45? Again, this thing has been around in various models basically since the Americans were fighting in the Philippines during the Boer War. This is the only thing, a 45 slug, that could stop these people because they were high on drugs and attacking the U.S. forces. I'm not saying anything about, you know, freedom or whatever else. I'm just saying why these things exist. This darn thing over here is an M16 assault rifle, all right? Assault rifle, what does that mean? It means it's there to kill people. That's what it's for, all right? And now we have something called an AR-15. Have you heard of that? The AR-15, okay? It's the grandchild of this thing right over here, which people are buying up like crazy all over the place and unfortunately are invading schools, killing children and whatever with these assault weapons. By the way, let me tell you something. They're not any good for hunting. Why? What happens when you receive, it's called a 22 caliber plus, a little bit above 22s. Remember those 22s that people shot rabbits with or whatever years ago? It's a little bit bigger, the slug, than that. Well, this is a high velocity weapon. And what does that mean? It's coming at over the speed of sound into the human body, making a small hole, and then exploding. Goes into shrapnel inside the body. It destroys everything in its area. All right? I'm sorry to be so specific in this, but you got to know. I don't know if you know this or not. But then it blows out the back of you. All right? So you're not going ever hunting with this because your game is going to look like hamburger. Absolutely. Guns. Guns and guns. Guess who this is again? Good old Fred, you know, hiding in his tent next to a telephone to take the next message for a new assignment. And by the way, we ran this organization just like a little company, all right? People would call in from battalions and all over the place. Hey, you know, here's a job for you. Here's our job book, log book. Everything had to be logged in. Who asked for the assignment? Was it a battalion commander? Oh boy, you better go then. Or was it a sergeant someplace? Take your time. You know, but this is where it all was registered in this book. So it had to be all accounted for. In through here, all of these things with these dates, so you can see 67 in there, all filling job orders, meaning that you either went out into the field, into the truck with the thing on the back, we got a helicopter, or maybe you could even take a Jeep. We supported multiple combat areas and units with remember what I said before? I hope you do. We were not only photographing the action, we were developing the films, we were processing the films, we were doing the printing, we were doing all of those things, and by the way, the editing of those things. Any garbage that came in, we didn't print, that's for sure. We looked very carefully at the most important photographs, and then we passed them on and up the line. And they probably went to, finally, to the National Archives and are buried there someplace or whatever else they are. But these are the units, okay, in our area. This is our area of action right here. And there's some things that you might remember over here. Let's see. Tay Ninh province over here. This is actually, and I'll get back to this later on, the parrot's beak. You know, probably most of you have forgotten all of this, but it's burned into my brain. And here are the divisions and brigades and whatever, especially in terms of photographers. The 173rd Airborne gave us wonderful images, wonderful pictures, and so on that we actually processed and sent ahead. Now, we were in why a field force? What does that mean? I got to go back in history again. During World War II, you may remember that General Eisenhower was the supreme commander in Europe. He commanded 4 Army Corps in Europe. So it was broken down, corps, divisions, brigades, and whatever else from there. Already in Vietnam, the Vietnamese Army, ARVN, had set up corps. First Corps, Second Corps, Third Corps, Fourth Corps, all the way from the north down to the south. This area here was in the Vietnamese Army Third Corps. Of course, we couldn't call it a corps. We had to give it another name. It was called Field Force, but was actually Corps Headquarters. There was another corps for cocktail conversation, 2 corps in Vietnam, 2 field forces. One was at Nha Trang, which was the first field force. You don't have to write that down in your notes. But look at all these guys who are in here. Every corps or field force had to have at least 2 divisions in it to make it a corps. Anyway, photo assignments. Here we go. Photo assignments, these images that I'm showing you right now, they're sort of funny looking, beige or whatever else they are. It's because they're old. They were printed in the field, in units like I showed you before, on the back of those trucks and so on. Anybody know this guy? Westmoreland. Oh boy. I have to tell you my opinion of him. He should have gone to jail for the lies that he told about everything that was going on there in terms of give us more troops because we're winning. We've got body counts like crazy and so on. On the ground, people were dying like crazy. 67,000 Americans killed and hundreds of thousands wounded and so on. This is the commander, where is he? This is the commander of the 173rd Airborne, a general. Now, again, this was taken by multiple photographers. They were coming into our unit to have their film processed. That's what we're a processing unit also, besides photographing the action ourselves. Look at this guy's face here. Man, that tells it all, doesn't it? Oh, what the hell are we doing here? And there is his M16. And here we have again, here's an M16 and 30 caliber machine gun rounds in here on the belt. This thing here at close range, as I said before, does so much more damage than these things, which had low impact on hitting somebody. We go through all kinds of terrain, multiple photographers involved, and I'll come to a couple of my simple shots that I took. And we're all wet all the time, always wet, soaking wet. But the only thing about being wet there is that you could take your clothes off there and shower outside anywhere you wanted, almost anyway. What's this thing? That's a mortar, isn't it? Okay, you better hold your ears. This thing shoots way up in the air and then down on top of the enemy. Oh, that's great for us, but the enemy, Viet Cong, North Vietnamese, did the same to us. That's why if you were inside of a base, all of a sudden the mortar rounds would come in. People are killed more by mortar rounds than by bullets. Here we go into what's known as a hooch. Every occupied space in Vietnam, we lived in tents, whatever, but they were called hooches. This is a Vietnamese hooch that they carefully are going into on patrol because these babies around here could have mines in them. They could also be benign and have VC rice stored under the floor. So they had to dig into these places too, and they could hit a mine in there too. This is what, besides going into a cave, by the way, with a pistol up in Tay Ninh province, this was the most dangerous thing that you could possibly do. Operation Junction City. Now, probably hardly anyone remembers this thing. 1967. And I mentioned Parrot Speak before. Here we are down here, our battalion headquarters. And off we went to here, Operation Junction City, which was the largest operation that took place in Vietnam. And everybody was into it. Now, by the way, here's the 173rd jumping into that area, all right? This is a parachute jump. The first major parachute jump by the United States Army since Korea. Didn't happen before this. It was a huge, huge operation. Jumping with them, by the way, was a French, little tiny French photographer, a very brave woman, Christine Leroy. Look her up, all right? Christine Leroy. She was so small. She had to get permission to jump with these guys, right? She was so small that they had to put weights on her so that she wouldn't blow away. Look her up. She's a renowned photographer working for Associated Press and European papers and whatever else and so on. This gentleman here, Orlando Jacobs, he was jump qualified. What does that mean? That means he got his jump parachute badge in basic training and could jump out of airplanes with a parachute on. This is far beyond my mental capacity, to do something like this. But he's one of our guys who jumped in with the 173rd. God bless the man. I cropped this photo out of a larger photo that I'll show you a bit later on. By the way, this photo here is, by Epley. Okay, he was with the 173rd Airborne. I have a print of this on this table right up here. There's also the new edition over here of the National Geographic History magazine. I don't know if any of you get it or whatever, but that's a lead article in there with this picture on it. This picture has been all over creation. You may have bumped into it in any other place. But anyway, this was printed in the field, and the print that's over here basically looks like it was printed in the field too, but it's an original. This is another way to get in and out. Yeah, holy moly, not me again. But luckily we had choppers to bring us in and out. I'll move quickly through this. I see some yawning in the back or whatever. It's okay. Stand up, stretch. Don't sing, because then I'll forget my script or whatever. But look at this helicopter back here. That's a Chinook. This is the workhorse truck in the air, okay, in Vietnam. They just took this 105 howitzer out from the back of this thing, and now they're setting it up. And now we have boom from that howitzer. Hold your ears, look at the size of the shell, and target, bang, over there into the mountain. All right, how do they deal with these things in terms of targeting them? Well, they have forward observers, just like they've always done in every war. Forward observer is a guy who crawls out there as close as he possibly can get and give a coordinate of an enemy position, which is radioed back in through the signal corps to these guys so they know their coordinates for their range and distance and so on. Now, here's a couple of my photographs. I'm throwing in here just as a joke in a way, almost. But convoys, we're into convoys all the time. Over here is the convoy commander, a friend of mine, Crowley, over here. I'm in the back seat of this thing over here, and I took this photo of heading down a road. Now, ambush time, absolutely. Be on guard for ambushes. Some of my guys here driving, he's got, another kind of weapon in his hands and so on. Anyway, this one. This one literally threw me for a loop. This was taken by another photographer, not me, obviously. I was on night duty, okay, as officer of the day, which meant that you, as a junior officer, were really officer of the night. Ugh. So you stay up all night, and your job was to run around the perimeter, okay? Not run, crawl, walk, or whatever else around the perimeter of the base and check out the bunkers. Well, that's what I was doing when this thing went off. There was an ammo dump right next to us full of artillery rounds. The Viet Cong went in there as sappers, Sapper means, it's an ancient term, meaning the guys that used to crawl under castle walls and put not dynamite, but kegs of powder under there and blow up the walls to get in. This is a sapper thing, a sapper attack, and blew me into the air. And when I woke up, I thought, and I looked up and I saw that the atomic explosion. I knew, as many of you here do, that you were prepared as children to go into the hallways if you live close by to a major area and crouch down and whatever else and hope for the best. So you learned about, flash. Remember that term? I saw the flash first for a second, and then boom, it hits. Bang, after that. You have something, and it threw me in the air, knocked me down, and knocked me out. This happened to me twice in the same way. The next year, they did the same thing to it, all right? The first blast knocked out windows in Saigon 20 miles away. Okay, here's the Tet. This is the famous Life magazine Tet photograph. Do you remember this at all? Okay. It was taken by one of my previous photographers who, after he got out of the Army, stayed in Vietnam and worked for Life magazine. So this is what he shot, and it was basically a CAPA award-winning photograph, all right? CAPA during the war, the whole thing was set up as something that is attributed to the best photographers during warfare. That's what he shot. John Olson is his name. Okay, what else do we do? Aerial reconnaissance. Oh, here's our base camp again. And gee, in just about, this is 1967, just a little bit, months and months after I arrived there, they were putting up buildings there. Oh my God, all right? And guess what this is? The photo tent. They forgot us. For God's sake, we're so unimportant. Over here is where that helicopter that I shot landed, took off from whatever. This is interesting. Strategic hamlets. Anybody remember that, the term? Yeah, strategic hamlets. This was set up as an intellectual idea by the U.S. heavy thinkers in Washington and whatever else, and implemented by the South Vietnamese government. So what that meant, and the implementation was dramatic, for counter-revolutionary protection, they demanded that the civilians who were out in the countryside come together in these camps. Now, this is a military emplacement with civilians inside of it. Okay, we've got minefields out here, barbed wire, picket fences, whatever else, and so on. And they armed the villagers to take care of themselves. What? Okay, they handed out these weapons to the villagers to take care of themselves. Now, when do the VC attack? They attack at night, all right? So all the people are in there, the villagers and the armed guards, supposedly, who are all shaking in their boots, call in to the Vietnamese army, come and rescue us. What happened? Nothing happened. They were too afraid to come out in the dark, in the night, and face the VC. Now here's another one over here. You know, you can see, this is like Fort Apache, you know, and this is supposed to be for, I don't know, fields of fire, they call it. You could shoot from here this way, that, whatever else, and so on. But these poor villagers stuck in there. This was a total failure. These photographs were taken in 1966, 3 years after the program was abandoned. These were still in existence, the only couple around, and so on. And what happened to these villages? The VC moved in, of course. Anything that was there, they took that they could use, and they burned everything down anyway. Didn't matter. Okay, B-52 bombing. How about this? This is what it looks like from the air. The night I got there, all of a sudden I heard, sorry for the bad imitation, of these things hitting the ground. Each one of these craters in here is about as big as a football field. Can you imagine? All right? Field evacuation hospitals. There were 2 of these in Vietnam. Luckily for me, one was close to our base camp. I wound up someplace in here. They thought I had malaria. I don't know. So after they so-called cured me, they pushed me out like they did everybody else who wasn't seriously wounded. This is an evacuation hospital, which meant if you really were in trouble, you are on your way back to Japan. Not me, back to duty. Okay, oh boy, ceremonies and events. You know, here's where the speed graphic came in. You know, when we could do these things. Yay, here we come. We're at a medal ceremony at our base camp. And here is the base brigade commander. This is a colonel over here or whatever. He's giving them a medal. Not one guy from my unit got a medal. Me, what? Where are they? You know, I got the regular stuff and whatever else. But, you know, maybe they should have had one for chicken, you know, and I could have gotten that, all right? Anyway, this is a photo that I took on the way to Saigon. It's a sad thing because this is the ARVN, the Army of the Republic of Vietnam Cemetery. And this is a gigantic soldier that's out in the front of that cemetery. Oh, and this is a good one. Okay. I thought I heard a mumble. Anyway, it's okay to mumble. By the time I've got you all mumbling about this whole thing. This is entertainment at the base camp, big base camps, such as ours and so on. They'd build a deck like that, and all the soldiers, the Corps would shovel out, you know, an arena. You know, it's like Greece and so on, watching the show and blah, blah, blah. And Bob Hope came, other entertainers, and Margaret came. And Margaret was one of my father's favorite actresses way back when. It was great. And what did we get? Now, I was raised a Catholic, so I think I can say this about our clergy, all right? We got Cardinal Spellman from New York. The poor man, you know, good-hearted man and so on. But he had been hanging around World War II for the longest time, and he thought he was speaking to soldiers from World War II. The poor man, I tell you, lucked out again, right? Some of my men are right here. Okay, photographers and lab technicians, and you can see the array, you know, of photo equipment here, speed graphics, purchased film. Aha, Orlando Jacobs, remember him? The guy that jumped? He was shooting 16 millimeter on the way down and on the ground. Film. It's amazing. Guess who this is down here? This handsome rogue who had hair at the time, all right, and a lot of really good people. And here they are. Here we, you know, where I took the picture of the photo van in the woods or whatever. This was Junction City, actually, out there. And these guys in here, these are the photo techs who are out there in that lab. And this is Sergeant Herrera, a lifer, okay? I wasn't a lifer. I was a reserved officer, and I was ready to head out of the Army as fast as I possibly could. But lifers stayed in and were there. He was a specialist sergeant, E6, high up, and whatever else as a sergeant in charge. Pardon me? Okay. He was there and saved my neck many times in terms of not my life, but helping me figure out what the hell to do as a young lieutenant in the U.S. Army. Because we are a helpless bunch when it comes to the organization of the Army and what our duties are and so on. So this man was my godsend. Dear past Sergeant Herrera. This is a birthday present. Guess who? I'll talk about beer later, okay? And this, and by the way, folks, it's right up here. My men, actually, I must have had too many beers or something. It got into my wallet, and they stole my fiance's picture, Pat, who's right here today, okay? Stole it. And they went to a Vietnamese artist and had it duplicated. You can see the original right here. And when she first saw it, she said, "I don't have brown eyes." That's all they knew, you know, and there, brown eyes all over the place and so on. They're actually blue. And that'll be proven in just a little bit longer. This is interesting too. Okay, holiday meals wherever you were. Absolutely. hot turkey dinners at Christmas and, Thanksgiving, delivered to you in the field. Not when you were under fire, obviously, but in the combat zone. They made sure that helicopters came out from the camps and delivered big containers of hot food to the troops. That is an amazing feat, and I'm so grateful for that. And all of us, the grunts and whoever, were absolutely thrilled by having this. Oh, my additional duties at the battalion. If you're, okay, I don't have time for an intermission here, I'm sorry, or maybe Jeff, you'd say get out, get the hook or something. But you'll find this kind of interesting. Courts, marshal, prosecutor. Who? What? STD? We used to call it VD. Officer? What? And barkeep. Okay, here we go, kids. Okay. All right, what is this? The manual. This is the military manual for court martials in the United States. This is a government-issued directional manual that I should have read before they give me the job as a prosecutor in the battalion. Now, this was not a good thing to do, by the way. We had homicides, all right, in the battalion. Now, this was all part of the battalion structure. If there was a minor incident that took place in a company, the company commander would do that himself, determine what the punishment was for the individual and so on. However, if you were dealing with a heavier duty incident and so on, such as manslaughter, which I was on one of the cases for, basically they would call up 3 battalion officers, they would appoint a prosecutor and a defendant. You had to gather all of the information, about this whole thing, fly around the country, getting evidence and so on. And unfortunately, I had to deal with sending somebody to Leavenworth, and I regret it every day because it was an accident. It was an accidental homicide with a rifle that a guy was cleaning, and he shot one of the guys right next to him in bed in the tent. The problem with this kid was that he denied it. He said that it was shot by the VC. They were next to a mountain that was VC controlled, and he said the bullet came down into the tent. Couldn't be a worse explanation, to tell you the truth. Oh, here we go. Venereal disease. There I was as the officer in charge. Now, I'm not medically trained, by the way, and I had nothing to do with these poor people, but I had to take the statistics for the battalion commander who was on sick call that morning for VD. Now, I'm not going to go into all of that, but I was there looking at every record, every battalion, every company, every platoon, and whatever else, checking off who's got it, who's not here, and whatever else. VD was so prevalent in Vietnam because of things like Seventh Heaven, spelled this way, washing car. Now this is, forgive me, the term was, yeah, you got washed, all right. They sold beer, and that was the end of it. And out of this came death sentences for many troops in Vietnam because they were catching things that were not on the books as far as venereal disease goes. It was absolutely horrid. Oh, here I am, beer officer, okay? I was in charge of the NCO club, non-commissioned officers. That means everybody below the rank of first or second lieutenant is NCO'd, and I was in charge of the officers club too. How I got this, I don't know. The battalion got there, the battalion commander handed me a wad of money. He said, get a truck, go to Vietnam. Go to Vietnam, I was there. Go to Saigon and get some beer, okay? So there I am. I don't know if anybody has read Beer Run. There's a book called Beer Run. Go for it, kids. That came from the U.S. I had to go to Saigon, get this truck loaded with pallets of beer, spend the battalion commander's money, which he gave me, all right? And I was in charge especially of these guys, and they were rascals, I'll tell you. Especially the bartenders who were NCOs. Okay, oh, 1 for you, 3 for me. And I never got my money back out of these operations, by the way. And I had to tally up to the battalion commander, so I had to take it out of my own money to pay him off because I did not want to find a special courts martial. Homeward bound, here we are. This is a short timer's calendar. Anybody who was in Vietnam, I bet you had one over there, a short timer's calendar. Meant here is the date when you are out and on a plane out of country. Every single day is marked off in black on this thing, waiting for the glorious days. This is about getting out for someplace else. And down there, oh, R&R is up here, R&R all over the place. Rest and recreation for 5 days. Go out of country, go to Hong Kong, go to Hawaii. 5 days does you nothing. Here's me on the way out with a Mamiya C-33. That's what you're, yep, getting out. You know, I don't know, how old was I, Pat? I have no idea. But, okay, remember this photograph? On arrival. We're way over there. Okay, when I left, this is 2nd Field Force headquarters, and our unit is someplace down in here, the 53rd Signal Battalion, all right? These guys were meant to stay. This was going to be Korea, folks. Going to be Korea. The plans for this had golf courses, okay? Places for civilians to stay in it and whatever else. This was meant, just like in Korea, the bases there are sort of luxurious in a way. It was all planned for here. I saw the drawings myself. Oh, home, my dear. At that time, fiance, Pat. Yep, love and kisses. And she met me at the airport. Oh my God. Ah. And just 3 more things, okay? And then school is out. Okay, this is a topper. Can you all read what's down here? They wanted money back. Those sons of guns. They overpaid me by $49.67. Pat, did you write that check to get it out of the house as quickly as possible? Because, you know, at that time, they were bringing people back in again. And I'm going, let me, oh my God, no, this can't be. No. No. Finally, this came about in the town of Oyster Bay. The retired Air Force individuals there put on a ceremony for the Vietnam folks and so on. And there was a final recognition because when we came back, do you remember what happened? And I hope you were not one of them, because I am against the war also, was after I found out what the heck was really going on the ground and found out more later on. So I don't blame anybody for protesting it, but I do blame the general public of the United States who came after the vets. The vets ordered to go there, making 20 cents an hour, by the way. Okay, fine. Ooh, that was pretty good for combat, no 2 ways about it. And then came back and spit upon. Somebody asked a person I was trying to get a job with, is he a jungle killer? And I was a little cuckoo at the time. There's no 2 ways about it. And thank you, doctor. In any event, I was in trouble. There's no 2 ways about it. So they finally said, yes, you're back again, 50-odd years later, and so on. And I'm coming to the very end of this, if I can see where I'm going on this screen. I'm actually navigating like crazy here. Okay, oh. Banner program, have you noticed something on Main Street? Okay. At the end of our program this year, in terms of soliciting and gathering donations for funds for the 68 banners that are on Main Street. Oh, there's actually more because others have been added since then, okay? My group, VFW Post 1819, gathered all of the funds that were needed to do this program. We have a special account that's necessary for this year, which will start up again in January of 26 for new solicitations. So you'll be able to purchase a banner again for loved ones. This time we're going to go further down Main Street, and we're going down Manor Haven Boulevard, okay? So don't forget, that's coming up. And by the way, over here, does that name mean anything to you? Okay, he's one of the guys on Main Street. This gentleman over here is the only Congressional Medal of Honor winner from Port Washington. The Weber Junior High School extension towards Port Washington Boulevard is named after him. Unfortunately, it's not on the Port Washington Boulevard side, but it's on the playing field side where you can see the dedication of his name, okay? It's just amazing. And here we go again, Fred. Where's the cursor? All I want to do is say thank you. And
Thank you so much, Fred. Thank you from all of us.
oh, please.
So we'll take some questions here. I do want to encourage folks to, when you have a chance as we wrap up, to come check out the items up here on the table. It's certainly well worth a look. So if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll come around. I do want to, again, thank our friends at the library for sponsoring today's program.
Did you keep in touch with anybody that you were over there with after you came home?
Yes. For a number of years I did, yes. Actually, I was out in San Francisco one time, and I met one of the fellow officers in our signal battalion, not from the photo unit. And we had dinner together, and he said, "Fred, were you scared when you were over there?" I said, "You bet I was scared. There's no two ways about it." And through correspondence with other ones, absolutely yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just wondered, what do you think the primary purpose of the photo unit was? Was it for recording or intelligence or even propaganda?
Photography?
Yes.
Okay. The United States Signal Corps had photography units for a long time, since the 19th century, actually. They were in World War I, World II, Korea, and so on. The idea of this was to take photographs of important actions, bring them back, okay, for review. And as I said before, we edited these things. Right now, anybody who's in the field as a military photographer is doing this all over the place. It goes back electronically to headquarters and so on, and far beyond, where all of these photographs are edited out. We did the out stuff, you know, to make sure these photographs were right and accurate, all right? So they go back, all right, and they finally wind up in the National Archives, of all places, where they are actually copyright free. So what you can do, you know, is go there, take a look at what they have, and if you want, you can get a free download from the National Archives. By the way, I have something to say about what's on this table over there, and it relates to the photograph of, if you remember, the member of the 173rd Airborne who took the picture of the body bag. That's what it was, a body bag, okay? There's a National Geographic magazine that's over here that I mentioned, and I looked up the credits for that thing. This is the new history magazine. And the credits went back to an agency in Britain that sold the rights to use this thing, okay? Basically, it was a Photoshop, a photo house with standard photos that you could buy and whatever. So they took this image and published it in there, you know? I mean, I should get a hold of those editors at National Geographic about this. I find that to be a sacrilege. I think these things should be free to the general public through the National Archives and so on, but to have a group of people control it and get paid for these things, very bad indeed.
So, Fred, I just have a follow-up about that. So this was primarily for record keeping and documenting what occurred. It was not so much for, as you said, intelligence or for release to news organizations as
No.
press releases.
No,
or
we had the
okay.
Associated Press right alongside of us. All of the press units, the British fronts and whoever else and so on, were there right alongside of us all the time, who had free access to the press and so on. These things were very controlled, you know, and nobody had them except the Army for a long time.
Presumably the press had their own units and facilities.
Well, the press
Yes.
photographers had nothing like we had this thing in the
No,
field. Okay?
But they didn't use your facilities.
Oh,
No.
sure. Their film went back to Saigon, to their headquarters, and processed there. Yes, sir.
The two famous pictures I remember from Vietnam, one of the priest setting himself on fire, and one of the very young girl, naked girl running away from.
Correct.
Are you familiar with those, or had
I
anything to do with
absolutely am
those?
familiar, and they were taken by not Army photographers. Those are taken by press photographers. Yes.
I'm wondering, Fred, how do you feel about people visiting Vietnam today? Vietnam is a tourist center.
I personally won't go there, okay? I won't be a tourist in a place of, I look at it as a cemetery, to tell you the truth. However, free world, free life, different people. You know, the people who are there now, their grandfathers, okay, were part, or older, part of the Viet Cong, you know? We're friends with the Germans. We're friends with the Japanese. We're trading partners and whatever. I don't know what that means now or whatever else and so on. But we are friends with Vietnam and are trying, again, economically, to deal with them and so on. But as we get into this age of total confusion that we're in right now, those countries, all right, are slipping away to China, close by, best friends ever and so on, and the Chinese will pour money into these places and forget all the USA. Go to Vietnam, have a good time, okay? Visit the Cu Chi tunnels. Crawl in there. Maybe don't take a 45 in there. That's the only thing these guys had, going in there and looking for VC.
Yeah, we have another question over here.
I used to work at we had students every summer that to Hanoi to teach English.
Yes.
Sorry, Ho Chi Minh City. And when they came back, they were like shocked because, you know, their kids today, they knew nothing about the war.
That's exactly.
They were astounded because they had like I called it the I Hate America Museum, you know, which showed the war, and they went into the tunnels. And it's just amazing to me that we haven't, you know, taught. But in an American history course in high school, by the time you get to June, you basically got into World War II. So there's nothing really educating people about,
No.
you know, the war.
It's the forgotten and want to be forgotten war. Yes, it is.
Do you think there's a difference in the content of what you shot in the Army versus what photographers who were not, the press shot? Difference in content, pictures taken?
No.
No.
There was no difference in content. I edited, you know, as I said, I didn't take all these pictures, not the Fred show. But basically, what was shot there equaled or was worse than what you saw on television or in the newspapers and so on. They shot everything, okay? Remember what I said about the M16, now AR-15, okay? You don't want to see those pictures. I wouldn't show them to anybody. I don't want them, okay? Yeah.
So related to that, Fred, it sounds like in terms of the history you explained, you had not really been much of a photographer until you were assigned to this unit. Is that correct?
My first photo job.
Yeah.
Okay. When I came back, I did some photography.
That was my question. Is
Yeah,
like, what
by
did
the
you
way.
remain to have an interest in photography after that, or was it a mixed?
Get this one. I worked for Levitt and Sons. I went a little freelance as a designer, and I worked for Levitt and Sons as their designer for their model homes way back in the 70s. Probably some of you may have walked through the things that I designed there and so on. And a lot of the brochures had my photographs in them. People in swimming pools, waving happily, you know, like, oh, this is the golf course, this is that course, and whatever. I was such a happy photographer. But I gave up on that because I wanted design. I wanted to be an exhibition designer, okay? That's what I wanted. BAIdesign.com. Chris Leonardi, who is now the president, he's sitting back there with the glasses on, okay? Thank you, Chris, for continuing what we do. Blumlein Associates, Inc., yes.
And I know a number of the exhibit displays here in the library were
Yeah.
designed by BAI.
When you shot yourself, were you basically using your Nikonos as your...
And other cameras, yes. As I said, I had 4. 3, sorry. If I said 4, I meant 3. Yeah, Jim.
Why don't we ask all those members here in the audience that served in Vietnam to stand up to be recognized?
That's a
I
great
should've
idea.
done this. Jim,
Please
thank
do.
you. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you for that. So, oh, we have another. Yes.
Well, it started there. Once you are in shock, if you're in combat, you have no idea of what that, if you haven't been in it, you have no idea what that is, okay? That is enough, just one time, to set you off, okay? Treating it. Oh my God, they didn't even know what it was, right? I came back and I was a wreck. There's no two ways about it. Anyway, thank you.
Fred, thank you for this. I was in Vietnam as a tourist 2 years ago, and they have, as you know, a war museum there that is slanted, of course, to their viewpoint. But there were 3 pictures that I even took pictures of that I could show you that really got me. First of all, the napalm girl that the gentleman mentioned, she's alive, she's 62, and she's in Canada. It's quite a story about her.
Wow.
And there were 2 other pictures. There was a Time magazine picture, actually, of the Mekong Delta with some soldiers taking charge of a prisoner knee-deep in water. And if you take a ride on the Mekong today, it looks exactly the same. You close your eyes, you could be back in 1966 there. It's unbelievable. It's a little bit spooky when you think about it. And there was a picture of about 100 Hueys in the air at the same time, which I stood in front of, I couldn't believe. And the other picture that I still remember, there was a burned out napalm, Agent Orange, like jungle, completely defoliated with a young boy standing there with no clothes on. And these are the images that they project to the tourists.
Mm-hmm.
But it's unbelievable, Fred.
Well, it's true. It's true. Agent Orange was in the air. I was driving, my driver and I, down to Saigon from our base camp one day, and this plane comes over. And it's like, oh, gee, let's spray for mosquitoes, all right? Right over the top of us, all right? Orange all over the place and so on. And why did they do that? To kill the foliage on the sides of the roads so that there would be no ambushes, okay? They'd ambush us anyway. Didn't matter. Yes, sir.
Were the photos of the Berry Massacre highlight, for example, were those taken by the Signal Corps, or were those all outside?
Either Associated Press or other news organizations.
But if the Signal Corps took the pictures and they went back to D.C., what would they do with them?
They would, if they cleared, they would eliminate some, put some in an archive like Raiders of the Lost Ark, remember that one? Looking down there, try to find the picture. Or they would go to the National Archive, as I mentioned before, yes, where they're available for free. By the way, talking about prisoners and whatever else and so on, there's a Vietnam poster up here made by the South Vietnamese Army. Come up and see it, you know. It's about the rules of war, okay? Yeah.
A question. You being a designer, I know that there was a lot of controversy with the memorial in Washington.
Yes.
I wonder what your thoughts are about the Vietnam Memorial, what, as an artist.
I think it is absolutely and totally in good taste for a memorial. You know, when you think of memorials, you know, you can walk around New York City and still see Central Park, you know, these grand generals on their horses and so on, raising themselves up, and in parks through Brooklyn, there's all kinds of monuments to heroes and so on. Oh boy, no, no. No, that's hubris, you see? What goes along with war should be humility that it's happening, not saying how grand things were. They weren't grand, they were horrible. And that memorial by Mia Lin, right, architect, proves that something can be done in this country. It's an enigma how that thing got done, to tell you the truth, because it's fitting, it's quiet. It's a memorial to the dead. By the way, unfortunately, Pat can't go on this free plane ride that we get to Washington to go to the monument to see it and other monuments and so on. Next year, there is a flight that's available to Vietnam veterans this year to go for free to Washington to be there. And I really appreciate you mentioning that. Yeah.
Another question here.
Yeah, Fred, my dad was in the 10th Mountain Division during World War II, and I noticed, over the years, I tried to eke out of him, stories about, his experiences in the war, and I know it's hard for a lot of veterans to express themselves about that, and I commend you for fantastic speech and opening up about everything that happened to you.
Thank you very much. I could not talk about this when I came back. You're only seeing, maybe you're looking at this for my benefit. Maybe this is the catharsis for me that I want to share, that's all.
Well, I think that's yeah, we'll take one more question here.
Yeah, my daughter worked as an intern down in Washington for the POW MIA organization, and there's still some Vietnam veterans who believe that there are prisoners still in North Vietnam. Do you? I know you talk with other Vietnam vets. Do you believe that, or?
I couldn't and won't put it past them. We created horror upon that country and those people. Whatever the political reasons were, that country bled. And some people want revenge. So I don't know. My opinion is I do not know at all. But one thing I want to mention to you that there are veterans, and I'm gonna make a little speech on Veterans Day at the band shell, and this is part of my speech also, that there are unrecognized veterans right now living in wooded areas in Suffolk County and on the streets of Nassau and on the streets of Suffolk County. Lots of them. And there are hundreds of thousands of them also living, surviving somehow across the country. Hundreds of thousands of these people. Why? Because they are either mentally troubled, police have come after them, harassed them, and so on. They don't want to go into facilities that are there already, supposedly for them, where they could be abused or raped or whatever. You know, I'm really going at it here, but this is the truth of existence today. Sorry. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Well, I just want to say that this has been just such an important story, I know, for us to hear today, Fred, and I know it's certainly an important story that you wanted to share. And from all of us, from the library, from our community, I just want to thank you so much for today's program.
Sure. All very welcome. Very welcome.